You're listening to the Literary Lounge with Dawn Bates on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Literary Lounge with me, Dawn Bates. As you can hear, my voice is a little bit rough this morning. I actually ventured out into the big smoke of London City yesterday for the Ideas Fest Encore, created by the fabulous Frankie James, who hails here from Wales, and has the brilliance of setting up Ideas Fest, a 2-day business festival for founders and investors in the Tring, Hertfordshire countryside. I don't speak to many people a lot of the time. I've spent 5 weeks just by myself with 2 wonderful dogs. And so yesterday was a bit of a break for me, going and chatting so much that I've actually worn my voice out. So you'll have to bear with me this week. So it's been an interesting week. Those of you who know that, who have been following the news, and obviously following what I've been up to, you'll know that I've been at the UN Women CSW 70 event. Yes, the name of it still does annoy me. The state of women. I mean, goodness gracious. What are we saying? They really does need a name change. But I was actually this month in the Author Academy, we're looking at the critical thinking. A lot of us do a lot of overthinking. We don't do enough critical thinking. And I'm not saying being critical of everything, but actually thinking critically about what we're being told, about what's happening in the world, and about what's happening in our own life. Stop overthinking, start thinking critically. But I am going to be a bit critical, because one of the things that most people think about when they're writing a book is about how difficult it is to start. But one of the hardest things to do is end a book. When you're writing that ending, you really want to leave your readers with something. There are so many books that I've read and I've felt robbed. I've actually turned the page looking for an epilogue, or I've turned the page looking for the rest of the story. And that happened this week. I finished reading the Giselle Pellicot book, and I was really frustrated. I was just like, "What is that? It? Is that it?" Now, I've had yesterday in London. I was chatting about this with several other ladies, and one of the things that occurred to me as I was, really getting on my high horse about it, was it lost in translation? Was the ending really powerful in her native tongue of French, but when it's got written into English, is that where the power of the ending got lost? And if that is the case, is it the fault of the translators, the editors, or the publishers who just wanted her story? And I'm pretty sure there was the insurance ambulance chasers out there. So many publishing companies wanted her story because it is a powerful story, and she has written it so gently. And she does appear to be quite a gentle lady, quite stoic and graceful. And I'm not dismissing anything that she's been through. Goodness gracious, that would just be horrendous of me. But when you're writing a book of such magnitude and of such a harrowing experience, yes, we do need to take care of our readers, because there are people that are probably reading it, like myself, who have been through, sexual violence, and there are people who have been through it who are a sensitive nature that have never been through it. And I know that my books are quite hard hitting. You really got to put your Bridgets on if you're going to read one of my books, because I am raw honesty. We're not there to traumatize people, but we're actually there to say to people, this is actually what's going on in the world. I'm not as graceful as Giselle Pellicot. Was never going to be a ballet dancer. More of an elephant splashing around in a mud pool. That's more my style, ladies and gentlemen. But it was the way in which this book ended, and there was so much I loved about the book. I loved the fact that when she's writing, She's really honoring everybody else's journey on this, including the evil that her husband had done to her. She was honoring him. And I really understood there's a part in the book where she says that she could not see him as the evil man that he is, the one that had done all of these despicable acts. Because if she had have acknowledged that, she would have lost the man that she was in love with. She would have lost all of those decades of memory. I understood that. I did. And I really resonated with so many parts of her story, because they are those of us who have been through it. Obviously, not to the magnitude that Giselle has been through, but the elegance at which she wrote about this, it really has taught me quite a bit. But I was just so disappointed with the ending. Just, it was just lacking. And I know that she's not very far on her healing journey, because when we look at what she's been through, she found out completely. The police found out completely by chance, because of the ex-husband, upskirting, and then they found all the videos of what he'd been up to, and and then it was at the police investigation, then it's the court case, then it's the media circle, and she's been thrust into the limelight. She is this, this role model for so many people. And it's not something that she was looking for, but we're all thrust, into things that, we never ever considered would be part of our lives, many of us. We experience these curveballs. And maybe she hasn't quite finished processing or wasn't quite sure how to end the book. And this is why it's so important to have a publisher and an author coach that actually helps you develop the book, rather than you just writing your story. Actually have someone guiding you, saying, okay, well, what about this, and how is this going to translate, and what are we going to be doing? Elif Shafak has just put out a really fascinating, and I was cheering when I watched this little video on her Instagram about how the title of her books have changed, because when we translate them into different languages, different cultures resonate with the word in different ways because of their cultural resonance with history, with the way in which the society is developed, and what is right in one is not right in another. So for example, here in Britain, we don't discuss religion, politics, or anything like that at the dinner table, do we? No, 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 goodness not. But we don't talk about money, but Americans love talking about money. But if you're with the Arabs or the Italians, and it's all politics all the way. So we have to really bear in mind the culture that we're reaching. And if you're going to be translating a book about such a subject, then don't leave the reader feeling, well, what was that about? It's really left a really kind of, I'm very disappointed with the ending, really disappointed, and I really do think that the publishers should have known better. I'm not going to spoil it by reading it to you, because obviously I'm not going to read the whole book to you either. That's something you have to do on your own time. But I just really felt, and it's not the first book, and those of you who have watched Adolescence or read that, you'll probably also be feeling the same way. It was like, well, what a weird way to end it. Would it have been better to put that ending at the very beginning and then unravel the story, and leave it with the parents finding out what he'd done? But again, the ending was just a bit naff, to put it bluntly. So I'm going to kick off the music today. We've got a variety of music today. Some of my old favourites, some of my newer ones, and there's some, we're going to kick off with one of my favourite bands. Yes, I know, another favourite. And this is Hola Mi Amor, and it's by Los Robojitos, a really fantastic Spanish band. And it's one of those of you who like Ronaldo, his wife Georgina. It's one of her favourite bands as well. And but this is a song that I really felt was really quite relevant for what we're discussing at the moment, and the situation that Giselle has been through. So here you go. This is Los Robojitos with Hola Mi Amor. Oh, such a great song, such a great song. And when you read those or you hear those lyrics, you know, sometimes when you're hearing a song with different that's written in a different language, or you're watching a movie that's written in a different language, do you actually read the subtitles when you're watching a movie from a different language? Are you really picking it up? Me, I like to just immerse myself in that language and the energy of the language, and feel the intonations of people's voices, and the watching rather than reading the subtitles. I mean, I know that, you know, I've learned Spanish, I've learned Arabic and Italian and Portuguese, Brazilian. Um, and so I've lived in those countries, in those regions of the world, so I can absorb the language on a whole different level to some people. But when you're reading the subtitles on the screen, you're missing those very subtle dances of facial expressions, body positioning. And I was discussing with somebody recently about when you're going to the theatre, it's a very different experience to watching a film because you're getting what the director wants you to see. But when you watch a play unfold on stage and you're seeing all the characters in the background, you know, you can choose where you look at the stage. You can choose which character you want to be focusing on, because sometimes when you're watching a play, if you've got a great cast of actors, they'll be responding and listening to the main character that's speaking. And it will be the subtleties that the fellow actors on stage are actually responding to, the conversation that's unfolding. But when you're looking at a film, you're probably going to miss those because the director's cut, the director's version is not what is something that they want you to see because it's their interpretation of the book. Now, my interpretation of Giselle Pellicot's story that she's written, I might be completely left wing. I might be someone who has not read deep enough, which is unlikely. Um, I am that overthinking critical thinker who likes to think a bit more critically and a bit more deeper, and you know, probably overachieving with the overthinking and the critical thinking. That's why I'm very good at doing my author coaching. But when we're looking at language and we're looking at how things are portrayed in the media as well, we're going to be coming on to that a little bit later, when we're looking in towards the end of the show. But I do wonder how much support Giselle Pellicot has been given with writing this book. And because she did say that she wasn't looking to be anybody's martyr or anybody's icon or anybody's role model. This is not what she set out to do. She just wanted the truth. And she did not want to face those 51 men in a courtroom because all eyes would have been on her. They would have been the ones imposing their I want to say arrogance, their cognitive dissonance, and their lack of self-awareness of what they had done. Because even though there was so much evidence of what they had done, these men still refused to accept what they had done. Even some of the lawyers did not want the word rape being used in the courtroom. They wanted sexual acts. Now, there are sexual acts and there are sexual acts, and then there's rape. And I know that this is a morning show. I know this is first thing on a Friday, and this is probably, you know, a bit too heavy for some of you. But these are things that we need to talk about, because what's been fascinating for me as I've spoken about this book and about this situation, so many men do not know about what's happened. How can they not know? Are they on Mars? I mean, we all know that Daniel Goleman actually wrote the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Well, not all of us know that, but you know, those of us who've been in personal development and books for a long time, we all know this. Um, and but how do these people not know about what happened? How do men not know about this situation? Why are they not talking about it? And there's an article that I wrote recently over on my website on the Dose of Dawn page. So you'll find a lot of my articles on there. So if you want to go and read them, then they're dawnbates.com/dose of dawn. Because we all need a dose of dawn, obviously. Um, fire you up in the morning. But like I said, sometimes things happen in our life that takes us on this trajectory, and sometimes we don't have the skills or the capacity to deal with it. Now, there's something in the book that Giselle spoke about that was very quite telling, that she didn't feel that she was good enough to go for a certain job promotion. Everybody else thought that she was the right person for it. Everybody believed in her, but she had that lack of self-belief and didn't really feel that it was right for her. And now she's been thrust into this limelight, mass media across the globe, as this icon, this martyr for women. And people are looking to her. People are so grateful to her. It's like they have finally found someone who can be their voice, because they are not strong enough to be their own voice. These are women that have gone, finally, we've got somebody who has exposed the fact that the shame in a courtroom is always put onto the victim of these crimes. I was put on trial for it, and when you're the person who has been spiked and transported and to different locations, and these awful things happen, you you have to make sense of that, and it's a very long journey of unpacking. And like I said, it's only been a few years for Giselle Pellico. um, but it's the unpacking. What support have the publishers given her? How have the people that have been there, have they been through something like this? Have they been able to relate? Have they been able to say, well, what about these? Because you are going to be having people who have been through these. I don't like to say victims of this, because a lot of us are not victims. We have had these, we are survivors of it. A lot of us have gone on to thrive afterwards, but it takes a lot of unpacking, and this is a woman who, if she wasn't ready to take a promotion that she had been trained for, she'd been working for, was a natural progression of her career, how is she handling being thrust into this limelight with millions of women round the world, traveling to France, seeking her out, writing to her? Even the Queen has written to her to say what a wonderful, not the Queen. I'm talking about Camilla here. You probably pick up on my royal politics right there. But for me, the Queen is Queen Elizabeth. May she rest in peace. Formidable woman. Um, and, even Camilla wrote to Giselle, thanking her for what she had done. How do you process that? As a woman who didn't know the evil she was living with, then had her whole family destroyed, and her two youngest children, distanced themselves or were angry with her, as she unpacked her own trauma, and her daughter unpacked her own trauma, and then other members of the family, and then discovering so much more about their father and the kind of man he was. It's been a very short period of time since all of this uncovered, and you've got people around the world wanting her to be that person for them. So I'm going to play another song now. This is, one of my old-time house favorites. It's Finally by Kings of Tomorrow, and I think you'll understand why I've chosen this song. It is very important. And then after the song, we've got the ads and the news, and then I'll be back to continue the conversation. Enjoy.
You're listening to the Literary Lounge with Dawn Bates on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Oh, there you go. That's the news and the ads. And continuing on a theme, like I started last week speaking about the CSW 70, the UN Women's Conference that's actually been going on. the conversations are still going on, and like the follow-up events and the discussions on the in the portal that those of us who have been attending. And there's been quite a few articles that have been shared about understanding the legal systems and the oppression and repression, the battle of power, that a lot of women are actually dealing with in their homes. And how are we actually going to be ending the trauma and the abuse and the violence, um, and that the health issues and the implications that as women really don't know what we're talking about. And we get this a lot from doctors. Oh, well, it's just maybe you're just stressed, or maybe it's just your hormones, and we get dismissed so much. And I was on a slight tangent here. I was on a property investment seminar, because I'm also a property investor, and one of the things that came up was the woman who was leading it was saying that one of the biggest issues for mental health is financial problems. But that doesn't, which is true in an element. But what is it that's actually causing those financial problems? What is it that's causing the mental health problems that are causing the financial problems? Let's get to the root cause of it. Because just saying it's mental health problems that are causing, financial problems, and financial problems are causing mental health issues, we have to actually look what's under the surface. And it could be violence in the home. It could be abuse. It could be ill health. There are so many things that are the underlying issues. And when I've written the books on mental health issues, whether it was the Man Up book with Tough to Talk, whether it was Alive to Thrive with Debbie Debonair, whether it was the stories, that we've covered in the Owning Our Ovaries book, which I'm going to read a bit to you now from one of the chapters. But we actually have to look at what the root cause is. Now, I could say, oh, well, I've got a really swollen finger and it's really septic, and I just keep putting cream on it. But unless I remove the splinter, unless I remove the thing that's actually causing the problem, I can't just keep treating the symptoms. And that is what's so, and there's just such a dismissive attitude. And I know that there was a property investment seminar, it wasn't a mental health seminar. But when people are going to start talking about certain things, they really have to know what they're talking about, rather than taking figures and fudging them to fit their own narrative. I know that this woman was, doing her best, and, I can't expect her to have the depth of knowledge in my sector, as I don't have, the depths of knowledge of a person who's been working in psychotherapy and psychoanalysis, and the brain, and I'm a geek. I've learned about them. I've held space for them. I've done coaching. I've done therapy courses to actually help me hold space for my clients when helping them write about their stories. But again, we've all got a place. Now, I do want to read this section of Owning Our Ovaries to you. It's written by Neville, or Neve, as she calls, but the chapter is called Neville. And this is something that's come up a lot in the CSW event, that what people are dealing with in their own home. And these people are our colleagues. They're our neighbours. They're, some of them are our partners. And it really does tie into, we don't always know what's going on. So here we go. My father. Oh, how it saddens me to utter that title, a true embodiment of monstrosity. The earliest recollection I possess of my father dates back to when I was around 5 or 6 years of age. As I strolled through the corridor of the TV room, I made my way upstairs to my haven. Returning home from the day's school adventures, and he emerged from the shadows, seizing me with a force that struck like thunder, again and again. In mere moments my lower back, behind, and legs transformed into a canvas of black and blue hues. To sit, lie down, or even walk was a torment. Yet I held my silence close, shrouded in fear. I distinctly remember rising with the dawn, ensuring I bathed early, desperate to shield my mother and sister from the truth of my wounds. The thought of them discovering my plight filled me with dread, for I feared my father's wrath would rain down upon them should they dare to speak. Alas, fate had other plans, and one fateful day my mother entered as I changed after bathing. her eyes falling upon the bruises that told a silent, sorrowful tale. Now, that's just a very small part of a Neve's story, but so many of us live in fear in our own homes, a place which should actually be a sanctuary for us. You know, our work colleagues, our friends, and even family members, they live in fear. And many of us don't even know. We don't know what our colleagues are going home to after a night at work, or why they're choosing to stay behind every night, or why they're always choosing to turn up early to work. Work becomes somebody's safe haven. And yet, excuse me, sorry about that. I had just coughing there. Told you my sore throat after speaking so much yesterday. Um, but when we see somebody turning up for work really early or working really late hours, you know, that I mean, I've seen it myself that oh, look at them, they're always at work, always trying to get the promotion, you know, they never want to come out with us. They don't want to come to the pub with us, or they're just being, they don't want to be around us. Some people are going home to a monster who, if they don't arrive home on time, they're going to get a beating. There are some people who don't want to go to the pub with you because they grew up with a violent alcoholic father or mother. But these things are not considered. These things are, the reason why people are staying behind late at work is because they don't want to go home to what's awaiting them, or they're going home to an empty home after the loss of somebody very dear to them. And so work becomes a sanctuary. Going to the pub is just a trigger. Like yesterday, me going down to London for the event was a big, big deal for me. Not only was I traveling by myself, I mean, yes, I've traveled the world, and most people do not understand how I can travel the world, but traveling to London to go and be in a place that is a pub environment, okay, the Babel Beer House is where Frankie and the team chose to host it. But being in an environment where there's alcohol, which is an environment which is where I was originally spiked, not at the Babel Beer House, but went to a local pub in Sheffield after going out for dinner. And so it was that environment. So that triggers my PTSD. And this is one of the things that people don't understand it, but it's coming very, very clear in the CSW 70. Um, One of the other things that has come up is the fact that people can be healed and they can think that they're past it. And they feel, I've really, I've done the work, I've done the therapy, but not therapy doesn't always work for people. A lot of the time, as I was discussing with one chap, that it's after therapy when all of these things are being brought up and raised up, or numbed with medication. Because that is what a lot of antidepressants do. They numb your pain. They don't help you feel it and move that emotion through your body. Emotions are energy in motion. It's about moving them through your body, and it's about getting those demons in your head or the monsters in your head. They're not always under the bed. They're the ones that are in your head, and you think, I've got to get past this. And once you face them, like I did going to London by myself yesterday, my friend Lucinda she was so proud of me. She goes, I'm so, so proud of you. Left me a really beautiful message. But I did it, and I was so pleased with myself. And I stayed, and I networked, and I didn't just sit there hiding away in my work. I actually had conversations with people, and I got my brave on. Now, for some people, they might think that that's a really like strange thing, for someone like myself to admit. But if I'm not admitting it, then how am I helping change the conversation? Not just my conversation, but somebody else's conversation. When we don't talk about these issues that are facing us, or that we're going through, these challenges, these stories that we have and that we live with, we're not helping to break the cycle of violence or the cycle of abuse or trauma. We're not helping somebody else get their brave on. And this is why I share it with you. Now, the song that's coming up next, it's by, as you know, it's one of my favorite bands from the States, Welshly Arms. And they've written a song called The Monsters in My Head. Now, this is something that came up for the songwriter when they were living through COVID, and like the dark thoughts that came through. And that they had that one person Now, many of us don't have a person, whether that's a friend or whether that's a partner or a spouse, or a sibling or a parent to go to. But it's a really powerful song. It- and I do feel that, Giselle Pellico she was very blessed in many ways to have such a strong friendship group. And but there is still that journey that she's got to face, moving forward. And but here is Welshly Arms with Monsters in My Head. Enjoy. So yes, very good song that. Okay, so as I was saying that, at the CSW 70, there's been some articles written, and there was one written, by a lady talking about the discrimination case of a woman who'd got endometriosis. Now, as some of you will be aware of and may remember, that my book Owning Our Ovaries, all the royalties from this book do go to Endometriosis Research UK, or Endometriosis UK, for the research and actually bringing down the waiting times for a woman to be diagnosed. Because currently, here in Britain, we're so far behind in so many ways. The it takes between 7 and 10 years for a woman to get diagnosed with endometriosis because she is dismissed by the doctors. And I'm going to read you another piece of the book, by one of the ladies in Owning Our Ovaries. But this lawyer, Elaine Banton, has been representing a client who was fired by her employees for the impact that endometriosis has had on her life. Now, going back to Giselle's case, if I'd have been employed, and the way in which, the mental health is impacted by sexual violence or trauma, some of us would actually be fired for having been through sexual violence, because of the way the impact has had on our work, on our ability to attend work, the quality of our work. We never really ask what has happened to this person. And again, there's the article on my website on Dose of Dawn, dawnbates.com, Dose of Dawn, talks about how when people are aspiring, with mental health issues, people look away. It's exactly what happened with me. And I thought I'd got a very good network of people in Sheffield, very good friends in Sheffield, people I'd done business with for years. But when I started to spiral, they started to gossip. They turned away like, well, I hadn't drunk alcohol for over 20 years. And then I started drinking. No one asked why. Not one person was there to support me. From my business community, from the friends, but there was one or two women from the school who I did not anticipate being there for me. They were there. And one of them had been a lawyer, which was, Marcy. She was just wonderful. And I really would not have got through a lot of it without her. And we all need that one person. Well, Elaine has been, representing this client, and actually really making her employer aware of what's actually going on. And so it's been heavily discussed within the CSW 70 forum. But I'm just going to read you, a little piece about from Julie's chapter in the, Owning Our Ovaries. This is, Cardiff's, endo warrior, an advocate for the better treatment of healthcare of women in Wales, Julie Dixon, and this is part of her story here. I decided to see my GP as something didn't feel right. I didn't remember, my periods being this bad. I'd had the implant in my arm for years. I saw a male GP and I explained my symptoms. The intense pelvic pain, needing to go to the loo all the time, heavy bleeding, large clots of blood for the size of my palm, and an excruciating pain when I went for a number two, like someone had shoved a knife up my backside. I had no energy and had terrible fatigue. I felt like I had barbed wire wrapped around my ovaries. The doctor said, I'm going to take some bloods, one which was being a CA125, as this helped diagnose ovarian cancer. My anxiety was through the roof at this point. I was thinking the worst. But when you're bleeding as heavily as I was, and the pain was so intense, it was hard to feel any other way. The GP said, it is likely your weight. Yes, my weight. I was like, are you kidding me? How are these symptoms anything to do with my weight? Had he listened to anything I had said? I was confused. I was a little curvy, yes, but didn't feel that overweight. He then said, oh, it could be IBS. I felt like he hadn't listened to a word I had said. I left the doctor's office in tears. The blood test came back fine apart from a little anemia, which was likely to be the fact that I was losing a lot of blood monthly. And this is something that a lot of women go through. I mean, how many of us ladies have been dismissed by doctors or felt dismissed by doctors, especially the male doctors when it comes to women's issues? Where they say, oh, it's because you're overweight, you're overreacting, you're busy lifestyles. But what's even worse is being dismissed by a female doctor. Now, when I went to report what had happened to me back in 2017, I had a female doctor, but because I was well put together, could maintain eye contact, and had managed to put a smile on my face, but by the end of the appointment, she dismissed what had happened to me. This is a woman who is in a position of authority and who should have been trained to recognize the signs, but she wasn't. Now, do we blame her or do we blame the NHS? Do we blame her lack of empathy for another woman suffering, or the fact that she just wasn't aware enough? Or if we look at it from a different point of view, was this a woman who had been through it herself but couldn't face the thought of another woman having gone through it, and it triggered her? None of us know these things. We don't know what somebody else is dealing with. So it's always good to consider this. But this woman is a doctor. This man that Julie went to see about her endometriosis, about her health, should have been there to help them. Now, we all know that the NHS is crumbling. The NHS is, people are doing their best, but I've been waiting for an appointment at the doctor's for over 3 months, and I finally get one. And it was a phone call between the hours of this and that. And so I'm not waiting for a parcel delivery. I need a doctor's appointment. And yet, when the phone call came, I was in the bathroom. So I missed that appointment because I was not given a specific time. We have got to do better. Our doctors have got to do better. We have to be better for everybody and for ourselves, because I know for a fact that if that doctor that I went to see, or that doctor that Julie went to see, if that had been impacting them directly, they would want better service. So the next song I'm going to play it's a great song. Obviously, I'm choosing it, but it's Teardrop by Massive Attack, and I do feel it's very relevant. So enjoy this one.
You're listening to the Literary Lounge with Dawn Bates on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Right then, folks. So that was the news and the ads for you. Oh, there's a lot going on in the world, isn't there, really? So much. I mean, I know that, I do tackle some quite tough subjects on here, and but I do feel it's relevant. I do feel that, when we listen to these songs, people are, they're writing about certain things that they're going through to help inspire us or to relate to us. And that's what storytelling is. It's done through, the art of literature. It's, whether it's songwriting, writing plays, books, and music, or expressing yourself through dance, and this is one of the things that I really love about the work that I do. I get to see people really truly express themselves and share their journey so that we can inspire other people, because as I said many times, there are a lot of people who cannot afford a therapist or they cannot afford a coach, but they can afford a book, and they can read it in their own time. They can make their own notes. They can, inspire other people through their own journey to take action, whether that's a business book, and we're sharing our expertise and our models and, the processes, or whether it is, this is my story. I'm sharing it with you because I know that you probably don't have somebody there to cheer you on. I know that you probably don't have someone that you can relate to. A lot of the times we can't speak to our friends. They don't understand what it is that we're going through. They're not equipped to deal with some of the things that are going on in our lives. And our friends can be that person where we can just escape what's going on at home. And this is one of the things that did happen during COVID. A lot of people were trapped inside their home with the monster. They were the ones that they could not go anywhere. Everyone was in a lockdown. And I know that when you had lockdown here in Britain, it was much more severe than what I was experiencing because I was out in Latin America at the time. We're on the beaches, we didn't have the restrictions that and each state of Brazil was very differently monitored than the other, but predominantly we were on the beach. We were just going ahead and doing things that we would normally do. People were wearing masks. We had the choice to wear or not to wear, choice to take ivermectin or not to take ivermectin. It wasn't compulsory because some of the laws and some of the ways in which governments behaved actually violated the international human rights law. And a lot of people didn't consider that because they were not learned enough. They hadn't taken the time to research what was going on. They hadn't taken the time to think critically about what was being told to them. We're already seeing like the World Economic Forum actually say that, it was a great way of testing how quickly the powers that could control the masses and shut down the world. And this is the thing that we need to pay attention to. One of the reasons why so many people feel controlled or manipulated, because those that do abuse their position, it is because they need to have control over something. Maybe it's because they never felt that they had control in their own life. And like I've said before, we only control the things we're afraid of. Because imagine if everybody on the planet was actually very much into critically thinking and researching and believing in their ability to understand. Would the governments get away with as much as they get away with? Would the abusers get away with as much as they did if we all stood in our courage and in our strength? Um, I actually believe that we had the capacity and the ability to stand on our own 2 feet. Now, as women, one of the things that we see is a lot of women don't believe in themselves. We have the capacity, ladies, to receive the seed of life into our bodies and then grow that seed into a human being, a human life. And then we have this incredible power to push that life out into the world and then keep that child alive on breast milk alone. Now, some of us, our bodies don't function the way we would like them to. Sometimes it is, really hard for us to get pregnant or to contain a pregnancy and actually be able to give birth. And that is something that a lot of people who do get pregnant very easily, we take that for granted. We should never take it for granted. The ability to grow and give birth to life is a very powerful gift. And if we can do that, ladies, we can do anything. But the people that want to manipulate us and control us, they want us to be isolated. And the Sarah's chapter in Owning Our Ovaries, I'm just going to read you a little bit about from that now because it is very relevant. Again, going back to the CSW 70 and what that was going on with Giselle Pellicolo, the control that he had by drugging her. But this is part of Sarah Wright's chapter in the book Owning Our Ovaries. He began to control every aspect of my life. I wasn't allowed friends, a phone to call anyone, nor was I allowed to see my family or have my own money. I wasn't allowed my own opinion or a voice of any kind. Asking questions was impossible, and to him I was an invisible slave, allowed to do only what he said. Being forced to cook 3 meals a day at the age of 19, when I'd never been taught to cook, was hard. I ate at the local sandwich shop, which people from Nottingham called the Cob Shop. I ate there every morning for breakfast, at other food shops in the evenings or at friends' houses. I had never cooked a meal in my life before this point. The boyfriend got his mum to come for the weekend from London to teach me how to cook, just for him to be satisfied. I would clean the house every day ready for his inspection, just to make sure it was up to his standards. He'd come home and run his finger over plug sockets, checking for dust. I became paranoid about cleaning, looking for dirt and dust all the time, just to avoid his abusive behaviour. No longer having freedom over any aspect of my life, I existed for the sole purpose of being and doing whatever he needed and wanted me to do. Once a week, he would say, "Right, you have an hour to go and treat yourself. Here is some money." Driving the car he gave me, I went to a clothing shop to buy something to reward myself for all the hard work of cooking and cleaning I'd done that week. Oh, what amazing, kind person you are not. That's a bit of Sarah's humour and sarcasm. Even the car he'd given me was because he'd taken my car, made it his, and then sold it. One day I asked to go to the shop. The queue at the till was longer than expected, which meant I took longer than he'd anticipated. I left the shop panicking, rushing, and trying to come up with a suitable scenario that would reduce the abuse I would get once I got back home. Walking through the door, he questioned me and accused me of sleeping with someone else. Insults continued throughout the day, insults such as slag. Eventually, he grabbed me, punched both of my legs repeatedly so hard that I could barely walk. After the beating, he sent me to my room to sort myself out because I was crying and looked ugly. I went to my room and started to strangle myself with a tie for my dressing gown. I couldn't take this anymore. The pain I inflicted on myself somehow took away the pain he was causing. Then something inside me snapped. The pain I was causing myself somehow gave me the strength to say, "You can do this, Sarah." And then I told myself I didn't do anything wrong to deserve this. I did nothing. I just went to the shop. Once I'd managed to find the strength to calm down and stop crying, I made myself look presentable. When I was allowed back downstairs, I had to pretend I was okay and everything was fine. The physical and mental abuse became more frequent, and there was not a day that went by that I did not get a backhander around the face for saying a word he did not agree with. This became my reality. Now, how many of us know people who are going through that or suspect the signs? This could be happening right next door. This could be happening to anybody. And yet so many of us are not aware of what people are going through because they'll wear, lots of makeup to hide the bruises. They will wear long sleeves or long trousers all the time to hide the bruises. Um, are we noticing that when a friend of ours gets into a relationship, that they actually stop being they stop coming out, they stop being the normal person that they were, or the vivacious self. And we really do need to consider what's actually going on and actually look a bit deeper. Now, Sarah really got her strength together. She really pulled it, and her story is so inspiring. And when you read the rest of her chapter and look at what she's gone on to achieve, you will really be inspired. Now, I'm going to play a song called by Davina Michelle called Heart. Oh, I do love that song. um I just feel very energized by it, and about you listening to the sound of your own heartbeat and really understanding that you've been given a life to live. You've been given a life that, whilst you've still got that heartbeat within you, this is your opportunity to really live a life that's incredible and live life to the fullest. And if you are in a situation like Sarah was in, or, that others are in, um, just know that there are people out there that will help you. We've got an incredible organisation here in Cardiff, situated in the Bay, called Borso. You can find out about those. There are lots of organisations. Like I said, there are books like Owning Our Ovaries out there for you to read. Now, some of the extracts that I've shared with you today, they are some of the harshest elements of the stories that are there. But these are all really inspirational stories of what these ladies have gone on to achieve, and how they're alchemizing their pain into their power, the negatives into the positives. And I've always believed that everything happens for a reason, and it's about us acknowledging that, because if we continue to go, "Oh, it's happening to me," we stay in a pity party, we stay in victimhood. If we then go, "Well, this is happening for me, this is okay, why is this happening for me, what can I learn from this?" And then we alchemize that into, "This is happening through me, so that this happened, I'm learning this. Now let me pass on my learnings and my strength and my courage, and the modalities I've used to heal on to other people, so they too can heal. They too can find the courage to leave." And that's one of the reasons why Sarah wanted to share her story. It was incredibly difficult for her to share her story. She was so worried because the people in her life during that time, They they weren't, a lot of people weren't there. They didn't actually intervene. They didn't question why she was behaving the way she was, why she disappeared, why she didn't go out and hang out anymore. They just ignored the signs. How many of us are guilty of that? um and how many of us have experienced that loneliness? We're drowning in situations, whether it's, we're really struggling with our business and we're feeling like a failure, or we're feeling like, I can't cope with, stuff that's going on in home, in my body, in business, and it just gets a bit too much. And where are those business networks? Where are those, you know where are those people, those networks within our workspace? Because a lot of us, when we move from one area, whether it's, one part of the country to another, or whether it's from one job to another, we lose people. And, we have these great friendships in the workplace, or great friends in the network, and we do so much together. But then we choose to move on to a new job or a new place because we need that fresh start. And the people that were once great friends, they disappear overnight. Why is that? No wonder people have a lack of trust. Now, speaking of trust, another excerpt from the book Owning Our Ovaries, which you can get on my website, dawnbates.com. Readers, go to Readers. There's a list of all the books that I've done, either as a solo author or with the clients. It talks about that when we're going through all of this, how well are we hiding it from our children? Because the children are the ones that, the way they see us allowing ourselves to be treated, or the way in which we're treating the fellow parent, the children are watching it and they're learning how to behave. Now, I wrote another article that's going up on my website this weekend, and it's about the word no. No is a full sentence. It doesn't need explanation. And yet there are so many parents that they will say no to their children and then they will give in. These children are not learning to respect no. They're not learning that no means no. And what are the implications later on in life when they don't respect no? Are they going to do a Dominic Pellico? Are they going to be like Giselle? Are they going to become a Giselle, where she said no to her husband, so he drugged her and did it anyway? We've got to make sure that as parents, we are setting a much better example, and we are parenting. We're not bribing our kids. We're not giving in to them. And I know I covered this last week, and it is what inspired the article. So like I said, it's going up on my website this weekend. But I'm just going to read you an extract from Amanda's chapter in the book. Um, and let's see if you can recognize yourself or recognize another situation close to you, and how are we actually going to change these. So here we go. My parents fought often, especially in my teenage years. To be honest, I barely remember what a lot of the arguments were about. I'd often leave the house or try to do something to distract myself if I heard them. I justified it in my mind as something that married adults did sometimes. While it was rough to experience, I felt it was normal. Other friends my age had confided in me about parental troubles, so it seemed to line up that this was just what happened. And if something was normal, then surely things would be okay eventually. What I didn't expect was for my parents to break up the way they did. When I was 16, my father caught my mum in some big lies and immediately declared that he was kicking her out of the house. At first, I was skeptical. I didn't trust him as much as my mum. However, direct evidence doesn't lie, and soon I had to accept that my mum had not only lied to him, but to all of us. Memories flooded back of times when she'd asked me not to tell him certain things, and again I took that as normal. Dad was often a very jovial man, but sometimes he seemed to get upset quickly and randomly about small things. I always thought it was the same as when she'd cover for me if I went to hang out with my boyfriend. We had each other's backs. No use getting him upset if we didn't have to. How many people ask their children to be complicit in the lies? And if, again, not in Amanda's story, but when adults ask children to keep secrets, and we say, oh, don't tell daddy or don't tell mummy. And it could be as innocent as, grandpa giving, the £5 and go, don't tell your brother and sister, but you're my favourite. Or don't tell your mum that I gave you this money. That's our secret. Adults are encouraging children to keep secrets. Now, that might be a special bond and that might be something quite sweet. Don't tell mummy that I've given you these sweets. But we're teaching children to deceive adults and to deceive each other, and they think it's normal. You know, is arguing normal? If we are not somebody who can express ourselves without getting angry or violent or being in an argument, then we've got work to do on ourselves. And sometimes it does mean taking a trip away. Maybe, I went traveling around the world to sort my own head out. And I needed to. I had to take that time away because I had to figure out what was happening with my life. I could hardly take care of myself, let alone my children. But I chose the man to be the father of my children. I chose a man I knew would be a great father. Now, turns out he wasn't such a great husband, but he's always been a good father in many ways. Um, but I had to pack up and I had to go. I had to go and take that time for myself. And the next song that I'm going to play for you is by the fabulous Cara Emerald. Yeah, another one from Cara. And it's called Pack Up the Louis. Now, those of you who don't know what a Louis is, if you haven't seen Leap Year, it's about, Louis, the suitcase, put him in the back, he'll be grand, or put him in the wash, he'll be grand. I love that movie. Absolutely love that movie. But we're not talking about the movie, we're talking about Cara Emerald's, you know. But again, even in that movie, that's very, what if you had a fire, what would you take? That would be very interesting. But here is Pick Up the Louis by Cara Emerald.
You're listening to the Literary Lounge with Dawn Bates on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Right then, folks, now we're in the final leg. My voice has held out. I mean, I know it sounds a bit rough. But yeah, it's when I mean, gosh, takes me back to when I was in, my late teens, early 20s in my raving days, and I would just dance all night. I was in my own little world. But then if people started talking to me, you have to talk over the music, you have to, and you have to kind of really stretch your voice. And yesterday was the same. The music was quite loud towards in the evening, and I'm talking so much. And bear in mind that, the amount that I talk, I mean, I talk to the dogs, I talk to myself, I live by myself. And so, other than this radio show or delivering my weekly moments where I deliver all this free coaching on how to get published, how to write, etc., and how to bring it all together and do all your brand expansion, I mean, I don't really talk to many people. Quite unsociable, really. So, when I do get to meet people and, I really like them and we have a lot in common and we're chatting away. And yesterday I chatted from like 11 till half 8. Obviously I was listening, but gosh, my throat had a workout. But it was just some of the conversation we had yesterday were just brilliant. What Frankie James and the team at Ideas Fest have created is just absolutely brilliant. So real big kudos are going out to Annabelle and everybody else and who was there. I mean, I met with Josh and Ben, and it was just wonderful. If I'm remembering their names, I know I spoke with a Josh and a Ben yesterday, but like I said, I spoke to a lot of people yesterday. Great team down at Ideas Fest. So if you are a founder or you are an investor, make sure that you get your tickets. They're not paying me to say this, but I just absolutely love the concept. So, and it's a space where, we just get to show up as ourselves. We get to discuss great business ideas. We get to discuss exciting things that are happening. We get to be curious about the world, curious about each other. And, it's that, what can we do? What can we make possible? What can we help solve in the world? Because business is an act of philanthropy. Writing a book is an act of philanthropy, because you're getting to give back. You're getting to create this entity where you get to inspire people. You get to create money so that you can pay somebody to explore their own greatness and to really tap into their passions and show their ideas and, really thrive so that they can then earn this money to actually then be able to pay for their own lives. And, there is a lot of pressure on founders. Um, Especially with all the government taxes and we hear all that, but what an honor it is to actually get to pay high taxes, because the high taxes that we pay means that we're actually making we're making the money to be able to pay them. If you get a tax bill of, say, 1 million, I'm just going to choose that 'cause it's quite an outlandish figure for a lot of people, but if you get a tax bill of 1 million, you're making millions, and you're being able to reinvest that in other people, reinvest that in the community, reinvest that into all of your efforts that you're building. And I think that this is something that a lot of people don't understand about entrepreneurs and business leaders. And it's one of the reasons why that, when we pay these taxes, we get so fed up with the government wasting that money that we're we're hustling, we're trying to make a positive difference in the world. And then the governments were just using this money to either boost their own pay packets or send us to war. We're still seeing events going on out in Dubai and Iran, and those of you who know the my thoughts on the situation. I mean, I found out last week that my family in Lebanon, they are now safe. They were given 7 hours to leave their home in the south of Lebanon. They are now safe, thank goodness. But there are lots of people who are still not safe. Now, you know, I was sat with friends the other day, and that have just got back from Thailand. Their flight was delayed, and they had to spend another 2 weeks there. They were blessed. They had the opportunity. They were able to stay with family. A lot of people had to pay to stay in a hotel. Now, some people, that trip was a trip of a lifetime. To be able to go out there. They've saved hard, an extra 2 weeks worth of food and accommodation, and having to pay for another flight home. That was way beyond them. But these people who send us to war, and I was talking to an incredible man yesterday, Ben, who was talking about these initiation processes that, people in other countries go through. And I was like, yeah, but we don't have that in Britain. Our men don't go through initiation processes. All we do is send our men to war, and we traumatize them, and we destroy countries and businesses and livelihoods and families. We create more trauma. And the men that send us into war have never been through an initiation process. They just love interfering, sticking their noses in, and creating such vast problems in the world, and just to pit us against one another. And it was one of the reasons why I refused to join the UN for a very long time, because they've had the opportunity to prevent a lot of things going on in the world, and they just sit there and they don't do anything. They do the lip service, they send a few people out, they do all the vanity metrics, but they could have actually done a lot more to prevent a lot of the things that are happening in the world. Um, and so I had a real big issue with joining the UN, especially the UN Women. It's like, is it going to be more lip service? Is it just going to be more performative work? And I know we're going into the weekend, and I know that I love to go deep into some of the conversations that some people don't like to discuss. And we've covered a lot today. And so I'm going to lighten things up. I've got some tunes that are really going to take us into the weekend. Some really great tunes. I mean, they're more tunes than they are songs. But again, understanding music, the way in which your brain works with music, and the way we feel it in our body, and the way it makes us want to move and shake things off, and really, really, when you're doing a lot of healing work, it talks about getting that negative energy out of your body, shaking it off, and doing deep breath work, and inhaling for 5, holding it, and then exhaling for 7. Breathing in again for 5, holding it for 5, exhaling on 7, really making those noises as you push that air out from the bottom of your lungs, because a lot of us end up with, all this negative energy, dirty air, as they call it, in the bottom of your lungs that are never fully expelled. Because when we're living in trauma, we're living in fear or in scarcity, we don't really breathe properly. Britain is Britain is full of mouth breathers, and I tell you what, I didn't realise that until I came back to Britain. People breathing through their mouths. And in a lot of cultures, they actually tape a baby's mouth shut at night so that the baby doesn't breathe through their mouth. They actually learn to breathe through their nose. The other day, think I remember telling you that, I was on a train and there was a man there eating with his mouth open. No, you're a grown-ass man. Close your mouth when you're eating. Goodness gracious, I don't want to hear it. And I certainly don't want to see it. And I really don't want you breathing. I mean, when you're breathing through your mouth, because you're not breathing through your nose, because your nasal passages are congested from all the crap that you eat, and all this mucus that's there. Really pay attention. If your body odor smells bad, that's your body telling you it's pushing out a lot of toxins. If you are doing regular exercise and you're sweating and it smells bad, start changing your diet. Make changes in your diet, because when you use these antiperspirants, you're actually blocking your sweat glands, and all those toxins stay in your body, and that's why your lymphatic glands and all these toxins and all this water retention, get it out. Go for a lymphatic massage. Learn to recognize and look at the patterns of when your body smells after which foods you've eaten and which drinks you've had. Your body is speaking to you very, very loudly. Listen to it. Make those subtle changes. Cut things out of your diet and then reintroduce them and then see how you feel. It will do you the world of good. Now, again, this is about all the thinking. Some people don't have the capacity to think. They don't have the capacity to critically think about things and go, why did that news story just follow that one, follow that one? Look at the programming on the news, because I tell you what, the other day when John was watching the news, I got so cross because of the way in which the stories of the war and what was going on in Iran and in Dubai and in Lebanon was followed by anti-immigration policies, and all of these immigration scare tactics, and it was just disgusting. I see this. And John wasn't aware of it, and because, well, I don't see this, and I'm like, yeah, because you're not looking for it, because you haven't been trained to look for it. Um but again, I could go on, but I'm going to play a new song now. It's called Dubai. It's by Murat Uyar. So enjoy this one. Again, I love that song. Well, that I love that piece of music. It just really, the frequency, and you know it is called Dubai. It is a nod to the people out there, because a lot of people are dissing a lot of the people that are out there, because they're out there with their matcha latte and the avocado on toast. Like, people in Dubai, I mean, that might be what the expats are eating, but that's not what the Dubaians are eating. I mean, come on. We know the good Arabic food, especially at this time. They're getting ready for Eid, and there's going to be some delicious foods like mango kanafa is going to be on the table. And if it's not, really seriously, what are you doing? Like, you need to have some mango kanafa on the table. Oh, hello, Owie. Oh, I'm just tasting it all right now. There are going to be things like musa'a, which is like the Arabian version of moussaka from Hungary. Um, they're probably going to have some falafel. They're probably going to have some kibbeh, or some matluba. And so matluba is actually a dish that's upside down. That's what matluba stands for, and it's a delicious rice dish. And the Arabian world, like, they do it slightly differently in different countries. Some of them will do it with some courgette and some broccoli and cauliflower with some nuts and raisins on the top, maybe perhaps some coconut. Some will, they'll probably put some, what do they call it? Squash. Um, and but then you can have some warainab, the stuffed vine leaves. Oh, hello, Owie. I am so Anna Gidden Owie. So that's going out to all of those who understand Arabic. So Anna Gidden Owie means I'm really very hungry right now. And I've made myself hungry just thinking about all these delicious foods that people are going to be enjoying over Ramadan in the next few days. Such a beautiful time of year, where you've been fasting, you've been praying, you've really cleansed, and you've really connected to that higher version of yourself. And it's such a beautiful time of year. Now, a lot of people think that fasting, that they don't understand the Ramadan fasting. They don't understand this Islamic fasting, and yet they do intermittent fasting. They do water fasts. People look at sacred geometry and think it's a very spiritual thing, but sacred geometry has been laid out in Islamic art design for centuries. The Kuala Lumpur Towers were designed on Islamic art because a Malaysian government wanted something that was so Islamic, so Malaysian, and it was, they were designed using Islamic sacred geometry. But a lot of the spiritual people these days have claimed it for themselves. We look at the vibration, the sound bowls that are going on, and how we resonate and how it's so healing. And this is something that again has come out in the US W70 about how these healing modalities are overlooked by big pharma. And we look at the war that's going on out there at the moment, and the fuel prices are rising. Who owns big pharma? The petrochemical companies are owned by the same people that big pharma are owned by. We're seeing this new meningitis outbreak in London. People, oh, you're not worried about going to London? No, I didn't even think twice about it. You know, if where your attention goes, energy flows. And I don't have time to be sick. I've got a sore throat. I shall gargle some hot lemon and hot water with lemon and honey a little bit later on. Um, I'll be quiet. I'll be spending more time reading and working on my business. I've also, there's a lot to get done, and I do like to be quiet. I do really enjoy that solitude time working on myself and my future vision and how can I be of service to a lot of people. And I know I do cover a lot of subjects that a lot of people probably don't take the time to think about. And I hope that, when I'm discussing these subjects, it's actually encouraging you to think differently. It's encouraging you to think that little bit deeper. And the the subjects that we're seeing, when I talk about these high prices on fuel, it's exactly what these wars are engineered to do. They want to drive up the price of fuel. So what else could they do? Let's just have a war. Let's charge the people. Let's put them into a bit more scarcity, a bit more fear. Let's take a bit more money from them. It might sound cynical, but history doesn't lie. These are repeating patterns. What's coming up? We've got elections again coming up, and like people are starting to stay. And you only have to look at the patterns of behavior of these people. They are not leaders. They are, well, they're leading us, into darkness again. It's about time we got rid of them. We actually had someone that is worthy of our name. One of my mentees from Cardiff Uni wrote a brilliant article the other day, Maya, about should we vote? Should we not? What happens when we abstain? She's looking at the numbers, and it was such a brilliant article. She's gone away and she's revised it, because there were a few things there that we discussed having read it. And I'm so looking forward to reading version 2 of that. So if Maya, you're listening, bloody well done, darling. You really did do a great job on that. Um, and it, the problem is like there are so many people in the world that says, well, if I don't vote, there's nobody worthy of me voting for. But how many women died for women to have the vote? How many people have, abstained from voting? And there are people out there that want to vote that can't. They don't have the British passport, but they're actually holding up this economy. They live here in this country. They don't have a British passport, but they are the people that are working their socks off to keep this country going. Um, they have full residency here, and but they're not allowed to vote. What about the prisoners? Once you go into prison, you're not allowed to vote. That's taken away from you. A lot of people don't know this, but so the fewer the people voting, the more the results can be skewed. So we really do need to vote. Now, I'm looking forward to voting. I wasn't able to vote last year because, the time that I'd been in the country and what have you. But now this year, you damn right I'm going to vote. Um, and you know, one of the things we have to remember is that a lot of the problems that we're seeing in the world, they're created by the people of these political parties so that they can divide and conquer. It's the great British rule of divide and conquer. Look at what we've done around the world. Most people go, well, why do you not call it the UK, Dawn? Why do you always call it Britain? Well, the UK is an organisation that trades birth, deaths, and marriage certificates on the stock market. Some people don't know that. Go look into it. Again, look into things. Go and think critically. Go and research these things. Read them. Trust yourself. Trust what you know and do your research, because when you do your research, you really do start to understand the world that we're living in. And if you are reading something that's confirming your views, go and read something that challenges them and then find out why you're being challenged, because we are all connected. And I am going to wrap up with another great song. It's a lot more upbeat, taking us into the weekend. Those of us that really want to, lift that vibrational energy. And it's a remix with Art Beats. I played one of his tunes last week. And this is by Robot. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. I think it's the Scandinavian, like the zero with the line through it. It looks like a zero, but it's Robot. And it's called Take Me Deeper. So this is going to take you into the weekend, and then you've got the news, and then you've got the ads, and then one of my colleagues is going to follow up. But have a really, really amazing weekend. Go read something new. Go check out my website, dawnbates.com. Read some of my articles, and I'll be with you next week. Ciao for now.
You've been listening to the Literary Lounge with Dawn Bates on Radio Cardiff at 98.7 FM and DAB Radio. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be with you again next week.